Grand Finals game number 1 starts here and now. 2 days of amazing competitions before us here for the North American region before we crown not only a champion, but our final roster to the global championship stage taking place in person in the coming weeks. I can't wait. And we get to start off, Taco, with one of the most explosive early game contested drop spots here at the Brutal Beachhead.
It's just insane to think about the fact that, Cold and Acorn, they're already good to go, and yet these teams still willing to triple contest them here at Brutal Beachhead. Typically, if it's just like, one duo contesting, it's a little bit more feasible, but DK and Ian, they are certainly embarking on a challenge here today, MDF, but so far so good. No clean eliminations from either side just yet, and there is always the possibility of that third party coming into the mix, so it's understandable why these teams are just opting to go for those initial loot paths outright.
That is right, and that's a fight that could unfold. It might not, but knowing Acorn and Cold, you never really know. Let's jump on over to the other side of the map. Let's get a little bit more into the swamps, right? Into the underworld, if you will. You have Sprite and Day here contesting up against NPen and Pump. NPen and Pump, who, like we saw before, had a very, very sound strategy leveraging the cacti. Now they're forced to mix things up. This is going to be one of those teams that absolutely has to come up with a whole new strategy from the ground up. Meanwhile, Sprite and Day have not had the strongest track record, right? If you remember looking back at the uppers and lower brackets, they had a really tough time in the early game being contested against other teams. I don't know how they're going to fare up because NPen and Pump have been playing very well. But first, let's take a look at this quick highlight. Mixit and Bugha, the first team to fall in this tournament here today because they're, again, Taco, in a completely new drop spot.
It's all about the off-spawn for Mixit and Bugha's strategy, but ultimately, these last-minute shifts, I mean, we saw them contesting last week with Quanti and Yapko. It did not go in their favor. Now taking their odds at the Summit's base camp one more time, a repeat circumstance, but they're not the only ones in a world of trouble. Evil gonna find himself eliminated there by Chaos and Chance, and that's 2 quick eliminations on the board. And keep in mind, these mid-games, if it follows the trend from EU that we witnessed earlier today, MDF, I'm expecting a lot more action, a lot more fighting, because teams trying to establish some early surge, but at the same time, you might still get caught out.
Speaking about teams getting caught out, does look like DKV was going to be the first to get tagged here as Cold and Acorn are the healthiest in this little bit of an engagement. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of that, Vorteca listening on in there alongside Paco. But look at this, the shots coming in. You got to love the 2-pronged attack here from Acorn and Cold as they pressure from the left and right. And once again, you can see Tekka down in that low ground, just lurking, listening nearby, waiting for their opportunity to spring into the action. But no, everyone kind of paces away, so Paco, Vorteca won't just have the ambush kick off just yet.
But Cole's going to be the first one to head to the top of this warship, and at the same time here, MDF, if either of those teams choose to play a little bit two-split or chooses to engage, that's really what Cold is trying to keep an eye out for, and sure enough, Ian completely shredded Paco and Vorteca. They spotted the damage that Cold is applying, and they instantly keyed DK to finish the process here. That is a big pickup, though. Cold probably a little bit upset here that he just lost out on his elimination credit.
It's crazy that that just unfolded before I actually got to mention it, because I was just going to say, Cold and Acorn have to be careful they don't get their elims sniped here. And you could tell that Cold was definitely wary, like, wait a second, there's definitely that third team here. Let's not get tunnel vision. Let's look around us around the area, see if there's anyone on the outskirts. But instead, Vorteca and Paco were already on the prowl, pretty much keying up the opponents there. Meanwhile, talking about ambush, this is not looking good. 2 shotguns are out. Vino gets opened on, but the double shots are a miss. And Vino, slippery as ever, will get away. And all of a sudden now the tables have been flipped. They are caught in a sandwich of fire between both sides. And Vino is hitting his tags, so is Clicks on the opposite side of the wall. And just like that, from ambushed to attacker, all of a sudden Vino and Clicks find 2 eliminations.
Was it an ambush or was it Veno's plan? No, I'm just kidding. It was clearly not intentional from Veno, but the rate at which they were able to 180 that scenario into their favor, MDF, those are the kinds of circumstances where if you are Flappy and Evan in that situation, you can't afford to miss out on the possibility of a knock there, because they knock Veno. It's a lot easier to try and tackle Clix in the 2 versus 1, but now they just find themselves sitting out waiting for the next battle bus of Lobby 2.
Not to harp on that too much, but you don't even see Veno and Clix play side by side like that very often in the early game. Normally they are so far apart, so love that here in the grand finals they've taken a second consideration, if you will. But let's jump into the fight on screen right now. Rigby, Mordecai. Bit of a standoff, and they're actually the team that's disengaging right now. We're looking to potentially take the fight again, but there's all types of duels here. It's actually 3 teams now. They're jumping in for the Noxie elimination. Meanwhile, there's a fresh duo right behind them.
Almost wonder if it might be a Bugha and Avviv on the other side. No, it's still going to be Crisp, just trying to hold things down, but whenever you're hovering this northern territory, things can get a little bit risky, and Noxie knows. Alongside Chris hasn't had the opportunity yet to try and recuperate some of his missing HP and shield. Noxie trying to make sure that he holds these walls to ensure that his duo gets back up to a safety net range, but Mordecai, he's hurt, but he's still managing to stay up and running for the time being. Chaos and Chance, meanwhile, they're going to take this quick pause in the action to activate some of their Flowberry Fizz. Nitro Splash comes out, and it's looking like a full-on disengage. They spotted out. There's even more traction to the area, and they don't want to stick around for it. In fact, Chance getting absolutely clipped on that escape route. Noxie and Crisp as well, looking as though they want to try and close in, find that secondary elimination, but now that they're wary of a team that's just a little bit further up on that mountain face, it's going to make things even more problematic for them when they look for their escape and disengage, and they might even just look to take the challenge directly onto Noisy. He doesn't seem to really recognize the fact that Crisp and Noxie have scurried out of their box and could even be wrapping around this mountain to challenge.
Yeah, that angle was just no good for Noisy. You didn't even see them slide out, and I don't even think they knew that Mordecai was in the base at that point, but Trashy and Threats taking on notable names here in Turtle Tavern and TK with a quick and swift elimination here in just the opening moments. Meanwhile, Cold and Acorn find their mark, and this is onto Death NYC, just on the rotate on the outskirts here. And I couldn't even tell you how this all played out because they are deep in the storm right now. So obviously someone overstood their welcome. Death likely coming around here to try to play for a save on his teammate, but no, actually just a knock. So yeah, all types of questions in store as to why Death was way out at the sandy steps without a duo mate.
He might have been looking for a reboot opportunity.
No, he
and
got
that
knocked. That's what I thought at first, but he got knocked and then finished. So I have no clue why he was over here.
It could also just be like last minute scrap pickups, because you have to remember a lot of what Clix and Veno have been doing in past weeks is they've been staying a little bit longer than some would initially anticipate in tanking up some of those early storm ticks, because they like to go for those dead side rotates. And we saw them get their surge online really early, so if they had been lingering, that might have been the theory there for Death and Edgy. But you also have to remember that Death and Edgy, they've also gone for a little bit of a later switch up in their initial drop. They were originally contesting Mongrel and Mr. Savage over at Cliffside Lodge, but after things didn't necessarily pan in their favor during semis, they shifted to being at that split between Primo Pumps and the Dam Bridge, and that's an area that is potentially triple contested today. I know they've been dealing with Vorteca and Paco at that drop, but there's also the chance for Cirque and Havoc to be present there, so maybe Death and Edgy, if you're dealing with a triple contest at your initial drop, you're probably just looking for more loot, probably just hoping that no one else is out that far in the storm with you. It's just very unfortunate that they happen to run into Acorn and Cold along the way.
Yeah, and talk about teams, you know, setting up ambushes, looking for one another, storm fights. I mean, there's a lot going on here. There's a team rotating south right now, first of all, through the riverside underneath Chubbs and Skittles. They're going to catch one of that here shortly. And there it is. It's actually Rapid in company. It's it, Batman Bugha there, who gets up to the top as well. Chubbs and Skittle have to give up their spot. This is going to give all the information away to G Money as well, and you can see what the strat was. Obviously trying to hold down that flaming hoop boost there for the rotate. Chubbs and Skittles likely would have otherwise come up on some eliminations there onto G Money, so it does seem like G Money and Reciprocal can count their lucky stars right now.
Not only that, but I think for Reciprocal and G Money as well, again, we're seeing some teams just kind of straggling a little further behind the rest. You can look even slightly south of where G Money and Reciprocal are on the mini-map. There's another duo still present, and it's seemingly, it could be Sprite and hey, I'm just, yeah, it's just crazy to think about though, these teams just straggling a little bit further behind. But again, when you do have access to those flaming boost tubes, part of the danger of opting to rotate with them is you never know when a team might just be camping, trying to find an easy elimination.
Well, here we have it in the coming moments. We are going to see very likely a Storm Surge trigger. Warn the lobby here that they will have to take a fight here shortly. Meanwhile, our reigning champions, Peterbot, Oyo, sizing up, eyeing up Vino and Clicks. They're going to find a couple tags there. But again, given the new meta, given the new adjustments, all of these fights, much different results come at the tail end of taking a battle, trading and exchanging. If you start losing your heals come the early and mid game, you're going to be in a world of trouble if you don't finish that fight and get a refresh. That's just where we are right now. So we're seeing much more teams disengage, at least amongst the top tier, right? The top elites are not overcommitting. Then you have these other scrappy duos straight taking a fight to the lobby, really is what we're seeing go down right here. But talking about big fights, Shadow and Virgo here, a battle for position right now, as Peterbot and Boya have been stopped on their rotate.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem is that it only seems like a temporary halt, but it might continue to work even further against Virgo and Shadow. We saw Peterbot and Pollo disengaging from Clicks and Veno. They got some shield damage. They knew they had their tags. They wanted to just keep it moving because Peterbot and Pollo love holding players on the edge of zone, and it has been a easy to replicate cycle for them, but when they get caught out slightly themselves, doesn't seem like it's going to deter their mental. But Virgo and Shadow, they're now forced to essentially reconsider whether or not they want to essentially follow that same path that they just saw Pollo and Peterbot embark upon. They've got them directly in front, trying to get some shots, but you've got to connect. Virgo instead just going to alert Peterbot and Pollo of his exact location, and unlike his shot exchange, Peterbot is not going to miss with that Mythic Combat Assault Rifle. So, and now Virgo, Shadow potentially find themselves getting held one more time.
Man, there's a big storm base there, just a surge base looking inwards. We jump in real quick with Victor V and Paper, who are coming to essentially pick up the scraps here of what's left over at the bunker, find themselves their attachments, and rotate out. Looking at the loadout for Victor, it's not looking the greatest here as they are just reliant, heavily relying on white heals, but it's not the worst given the fact that Flowberry Fizz is also in hand here. Might be time to actually utilize that and get a rotate going. Iamzo, Tayson, Clicks, Vino in the distance there. Two of the teams that they're going to have to cross past, but instead they land on top of, so this is telling us they have not gotten into enough action here come the early game. They're desperate for a fight right now. And this is a very, very interesting clash here because you're looking at what essentially is an extremely veteran duo down in the low ground here, and then an up-and-coming team of Paper and Victor right now. Paper obviously has that veteranship underneath him, but Victor V new to these types of, you know, lobby settings, if you will.
The problem, though, is that Tayson and Iamzo, I know that they were under pressure, so obviously they're not going to take that opportunity to try and get off a medkit or anything like that, but I am actually curious about their white heal situation because both Iamzo and Tayson looked a little bit worse for wear in that initial exchange. That could be part of the reason why Paper and Victor V felt as if that was a push that they could look for initially, but things are definitely heating up here at the Rift Island. A handful of teams looking to try their hand at controlling the capture point up here, or at the very least getting some much needed resources, some much needed material. Source and Poffy, one of our duos, now in a slight skirmish with Batman Bugha and Rapid, but Batman Bugha, Rapid, they are no fold-over duo by any means, Monster. And they look as if they're willing to take a fight, but that's only if Source and Poppy keep pressing the issue. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see Batman Bugha or Rapid even opt to try and look for some sort of flank maneuver, because Source and Poppy, they're spending a lot of time committing towards this head-on battle, but Batman Bugha and Rapid, they also might not need the damage.
I think this is a really cool fight. Source and Poffy, Batman Bugha, Rapid, you know, very much met their match. Again, they disengage. Here's Acorn and Cold. So we knew that they were, you know, clearly coming up pretty big from outside the storm with a set of eliminations. They found another one on the way here. Now, seems like the zone's gonna force them to move. Visuals and Braids don't want to stick around for too much longer, as they've already taken what looks to be the bulk of the damage here, and likely have exhausted their heals.
Heals aside, Visuals right now just trying to find a path. It's going to be relatively undisturbed. Sprite, though, incredibly hurt just behind. This could be a massive refresh opportunity, but Sprite, he's hungry. You can tell he also needs to get some damage done. Day's gonna be the first to fall, though, and in exchange, Visuals does get knocked, but the trade is good. Braids hoping that he might have an opportunity to go for the revive, but at the same time, no, he's just gotta bail. He does not have the HP to stick around. On top of that, he knows there's already going to be teams based up inside of the edge of zone. You can see Chubbs kind of scoping him out, gauging, is this a solo? And the moment that he's recognized this one, he's probably gonna draw the attention of the entire lobby with it.
Oh yeah, they know he's a solo. They've been looking at him make this rotate this entire time. And the sad part about it, they catch those 2 eliminations, which helps them beat the surge, but no heals are dropped. So Braids knew immediately, I gotta get out of here. And that's just a tough spot to be in. Meanwhile, Kanata and Cooper, we were so curious as to whether or not they'd be able to come up with a strong Storm Surge strategy. And you can see that they didn't quite make one, right? They're trying to box fight right now in the mid game, which tells us that they did not get enough early game tags. Their towers either didn't reveal to them enough, you know, teams to take a fight, or it just wasn't enough activity. So we're gonna see Kanata and Cooper face the, you know, the other side of the coin, if you will, for when big adjustments happen right during this huge event right here. So now for Raze and Curly, though, Raze has to play for the pickup.
Wow.
Agers just comes in and clutches up on behalf of his duo. So tough turn of events here. I don't even know if Agers is going to be able to make it out the zone. It's going to be super close. Look, it's moving right now, and he's right behind Dash and Seek.
Yeah, but the moment they look back for even a split second, it takes one tag, and then Agers is just doomed. He does have 2 bottles of Flowberry Fizz to work with, so that'll at least be his saving grace for the time being, but he has to stay ahead of this storm. He can't afford to take any excessive tick damage when he's already just so low on his HP as is. Other teams bound to spot him out as a solo as well. Curly and Raze, they might have just sabotaged all 3 teams in the process. Almost wonder what would have happened if it had just been an initial exchange between Rise and Agers, Cooper and Kanata. Instead, now all 3 of those teams not looking to be set in a position where they're gonna be able to play out a successful late game.
Look at this extremely clever rotate from Bugha and Avviv. Deciding to rotate once the pressure started to build up. That's a call that you only make by being exposed to lobby focus in the past, right? Over the years in the FNCS lobby. Very, very smart decision there to get out of there before things took a turn for the worse, before the material counts were really affected. I'm seeing Ritual's HP chunk away, but it does seem like he managed to pop a Nuka-Cola or something to stay in the game right here. But look at this, Paco. Vorteca, this is the same spot Bugha and company were just in, so it doesn't surprise me other teams are shooting in. All these teams right here seem to be very much aggressive.
Agers, though, still lingering as a solo on that low ground, just kind of hoping that all these duos surrounding him choose to get a move on. Maybe if he just continues trailing ever so slightly behind of those last-minute rotational teams, he might manage to go unnoticed for a few placements longer. That's really all that this is about at this point when you are left in that kind of solo position. But Re and Ritual, ample amounts of crash pads to work with, and granted, the lack of white heals could be a concern, but the Nitro Splash is going to help them work their way up this mountain face, and this is where the shifts in elevation could really pose a threat to some of these teams. Clix and Veno going to get split for a moment, but Clix, quick as ever, manages to stay on pace with this duo. He's got to be careful, though. A lot of congestion starting to build at the bottom of this mountain face.
This is very good by them, though. They're going and move nice and early. You saw every team we saw moving right away. They moved as soon as the zone revealed itself. This is, again, experience starting to kick in here. Players noticing there is a real danger in staying on the low ground here, moving with everyone else, and allowing teams to get situated, find those quirky angles to look down. Meanwhile, Tayson, though, in the box fight here, doing exactly what he does best alongside Yamza, and that's finding damage, finding tags, but they have a lot of attention coming in on them. As teams are seeing opportunity here open up, and no heals produced by those eliminations. They're just left to continue to work on what little bit that they have right there. So that's their first eliminations right there. Really picking up. You get to see it from a different perspective. It was the Nitro that kind of kicked this one off that started this whole thing.
Poor Nerf Face, man. You've just got two players, Nitro shoulder bashing your wall. I mean, most of the time you don't even really get an opportunity to react, as we just saw. But Quanti and Yapko, they are above the rest of the lobby currently. Granted, this is super early MDF. I don't really expect them to invest too much of their material in tarping outwards, trying to hold height from this position, especially with the way the zone is pulled. But that option for the launch pad, they can go for a slightly later rotate than some of these other teams, and I think remain unseen as well, since they'll be that much higher above the rest of the lobby.
Quanti and Japko, like you said, being up here is just peak positioning, quite literally. Very, very good spot to be in. Veno and Clix, highly elevated as well. Again, this is the result, though, of having Flowberry Fizz late in the game. A few teams we saw rotating did not have that luxury. Bugha and Avviv being one of them. Meanwhile, on the outskirts, Tayson falls, Threats falls. And that was far outside the zone, so unfortunately could not find their footing in time. Agers makes a top 20, though. You got to respect that. Being solo, earning them placement points. You saw how desperate and worse for wears he was. But look at this. Quanti and Japko end up utilizing that launch pad that, of course, is positioned right up top of the place that they just were, and then find themselves new positioning here for the next rotate.
I don't think anybody even recognizes the fact that these two are just all by their lonesome currently, just trying to rebuild, opt for another crash pad movement set, and joining everyone else that's moving towards this next front side of zone. They want to try and stake their position towards that low ground on the front side, but they're going to have company building up rather quickly here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them opt for a layer switch in the near future, but for right now, it's all about Cold and Acorn. They've got a mid-ground position. They've taken note, though, of Victor V inside of his box, immediately sent to scatter. Victor V barely managing to cling on, and there was just so much pressure being applied to his box. The moment that he drops trying to escape, he gets knocked by a separate duo in the lobby. It's going to be Bryce credited for that one, but Cold, Acorn, they've taken their opportunity. They saw all those duos dropping to the low ground, so they're opting to crank up instead.
Notice what all these teams have in common. They all switched to metal the moment they landed in these completely foreign layers, right? And that just kind of shows you how wary every team is right now. So unpredictable when you have such a big rotate, a big elevation change like that. But Acorn and Cold are going to be the first to go ahead and claim for high ground. And this is honestly pretty early. This is a very early high ground. Now, again, granted they kind of just landed here. I don't expect them to, you know, do too much with this, given that, yeah, look, they're barely even held up, and they're just going to have to fight here to see if they can find a refresher. It's going to be Noxie and Crisp. Hurt team right here, so singling out Noxie on the backside. Crisp comes around to his save, but no, Cold gets traded out there, not before getting the exchange. Acorn has to hit this shot. Almost caught with his pickaxe out for a second there. Forced to go into a medkit, and there are so many medkits there. Meanwhile, Bugha and Avviv timed it much better. Wait for the opportunity, assess the situation, and now go for height. and they come up here what looks to be off the backs of a refresher. They actually have hard mats to go ahead and solidify this. This could be a Bugha and Avviv Game 1 win right now, as it's going back up and over the mountain. Muzz and Epic will have to be extremely careful here. You can see they're running out of space to actually work with.
All things considered, though, when you think about how semis went for Muzz and Epic, this is a welcome effort here in lobby number 1 from this dynamic duo. Epic and Muzz, though, might get a little bit caught out. Veno, though, gonna lose clicks, has to make this rotate by himself, tries to get tagged in onto Sphinx, but he's gonna get blocked off by the wall instead. Veno, a victim of the lobby now. Shadow instantly return fired upon, and it's all down to Virgo to keep clutching out this run.
Still, every team we see alive right now are teams to look out for. We are inside the top 10 of an FNCS Grand Finals kickoff game. Sphinx and Tony also alive down in the low ground, but on height with so much room to work with here is Bugha and Avviv, and the pressure is coming down. And honestly, Avviv has positioned himself on ultimate height, just a layer above that. The tag from Avviv really putting on the flex here, showcasing 7 eliminations now. What a position to be in here. Meanwhile, the low ground, everyone continuing to fight here. Muzz just getting to work, finding his 4th elimination and a top 3 now. And Quanti and Jacko focus their efforts to high ground. This is perfect for Muzz down low ground.
But the problem right now, Yapko, he has exactly 0 builds left. He's trying to hope for a chop opportunity, but he still has to worry about this soul underneath him. It's Muzz. Muzz trying to go for the even exchange, scrambling around the bottom, but he's going to find himself with a 3rd place finish. And now, Bugha dropping from above, an eagle from his perch, waiting for the right moment to strike. Bugha and Avviv, we saw when they overtook Height MDF, and the world of difference was just that material count, that timing. It was impeccable.
Yeah, it looked like they found the perfect refresh opportunity as the layers started to change, and then they sniped high ground directly from underneath all the teams that were fighting on those mid-ground layers. That was a perfect game for Bugha and Avviv. They came into this end game already in a successful position. They had a ton of eliminations, but the fact that they managed to clean up most of what was left, especially right here in the low ground, they secure all of these points to themselves, which is perfect. And you can see Yapko just caught in a world of trouble there, but still a 2nd place for those teams is very, very well. That's a lot of points there, Taco.
Yeah, it's definitely a really strong opener, but man, Avviv from the high ground with that mythic hand cannon, absolutely disgusting work. Excited to see what happens next, but we'll have more FNCS Grand Finals action right after this short break.